Well, I just pulled off the road and I'm actually driving with the purpose of making videos, and as this what I'm thinking of as a series of videos is about, I guess the basic idea for me in this is the living of a long life. And because of what I do, running a channel and making these kind of videos, which is supposedly to help people who are thinking of making that change, which takes, for some people, it takes a bigger leap of faith than for others. And I'm inspired to do this by the comment that someone a message to me that came in sorry, I'm driving as well and I'm stuck behind somebody who is doing 20k an hour on the national highway. Here we go. See, so I was inspired because someone said it would be interesting to hear your views on the living of a long life and what it takes to live a life without thinking in terms of retirement. So that was something that I needed to get in. And so this is a series of recordings that I wanted to make on that, because it's important to be able to see that there's a very much overused expression nowadays in this new age kind of look at things, and in the wake of The Secret, in which you can have everything that you want. I have a difference of opinion about you can have everything you want. I think that it's not more complicated than that. But what's the expression? The expression is you create your own reality. And people, if you're thinking that you create your own reality, well, as a basic idea, yes, that is true, that you create your own reality. But here's the difference. You may have just become educated on that point now in 2023. Here we are. This is actually, I think we're into June right now. It didn't just start yesterday. It didn't start today when you read that you can have everything that you want if you can just visualize it right. Yes, you can. You could also run in a 26-mile marathon, and you could run that tomorrow, but the training for you to be able to do that successfully didn't start this morning when you signed the paper and paid the $5 fee for running. It started quite a few months ago when you started walking 5 and 10 miles, and then started to run 10 miles, and then started to run 15 miles, until you gradually worked up to being able to do a marathon. Now, we're talking now about the marathon of your life. So when people talk to me about coming here, and in the case of my friend who inspired this series of talks about long life and not retiring and all of that, as he actually, sorry, I'm driving in the Philippines and anything could happen, okay? So, as my friend has indicated, you know, what does it take to do that now? You can't suddenly do this. A long time ago, when I came out of the army, I made a couple of good friends in the army. Not people that were in the army were not my type of friend. I had nothing in common with them, right? Which we'll go into at a later time. I've got to try to keep this droopy microphone up. Now, I had a friend who was such a good guy, and I had moved to London and had become a professional musician. Now, what does it take to become a professional musician? I'd been playing the trombone since I was 15. That's what it took me to become a professional musician. 8.5 years of working at it in a pro band, a pro army military band, with a whole lot of training. Now, other people do it on much less than that, right? But that's what it took for me. Well, my friend played, I believe he played the saxophone, and he was such a good guy. And I went to see him. This was after I came out of the army, and he had come out of the army, and he was working as an engineer, and he was working in Manchester. And I said, why don't you come down to London? We can just do everything in London. And that was true. London was such an exciting time about then, in the 60s. London in the 60s was an incredible place. And the more that I talked about it, the more that he thought, hey, I could do this. Well, I was in Manchester visiting my family, and I told him all about it and what it meant to me. And of course I must have done a good job, because he did no more than go to work and hand his notice. Well, he didn't hand his notice in, he handed in, I'm leaving. And he came down and we went together, and I got him a room in the house that I was sharing with a lot of other people. So he came down, and for a while he was kind of happy, but it wasn't his scene. See, I'm revealing my age again. That's what we always said. Yeah, well, you know what? It's not my scene. Along with Get Out of My Space and other such things, swinging and hip, all those kind of words. Well, he decided that it wasn't for him, and I came home from work and one day, and I was working in a club, and he said, Terence, it's not for me. I'm going to go home and get my job back. See, so some people are not going to do this. Now, in a way, what you have to decide is, what is it that excites you? Now, this sounds now like I'm going into the usual hype on, well, got to do what excites you. But that is true. So many people go to work and they dread Monday. Some estimates are as much as 70 or 80% of people hate their job. Now, imagine that. They hate their job. Now, when I was a musician for many years. The last band that I played with, I was in that band for 7 years, touring all over England, and we did some on the continent and other stuff. Not a famous band, a well-known band, which is a big difference. A well-known band that had its own show. I worked for a couple of bands like that. I worked for the Bob Miller and the Miller Band. I was in that band when they had a Wednesday BBC. With the BBC, they had a Wednesday band show, which was called Parade of the Pops. You can look this up and you'll find Parade of the Pops in there. And the other band that I worked in, I didn't do their radio show. The radio shows had finished by the time I joined the second band that I was in for 7 years. And that was the Ray McVeigh Orchestra and Singers, for the grand name, 13-piece band. And I worked sometimes for 6 weeks without a night off. That cost me a marriage, because what I wanted when I had a night off, I wanted to, I don't know, go for a coffee or go for a ride on the bike or do something. I didn't want to get dressed up. I'd been dressed up for 6 weeks, so when I got a night off, that was the last thing that I wanted to do. So that cost me, I think, cost me a marriage. So the thing is that it's not for everybody to up and just come to the Philippines, right? And I've done many videos on what I think is the ideal, and there's no need to go into those many reasons and numbers. You know, it's very popular, no matter who it is, no matter who, from Jordan Peterson right on down to anybody that you can think of. There is any vlogger that you can think of that is trying to pass on some information. They'll all give you 10 reasons that you should leave the Philippines, 10 reasons that you should never think of going to America, 10 reasons that you should never buy a multicab, 5 reasons for why you should get up in the morning, 10 reasons for why you should make your bed. So it's always numbers, but my experience is that life, this is only where people are trying to get over to your simple point for doing a very big thing, and that is starting anew, reinventing yourself, doing things so differently that your life will take another turn. And that's what all of these numbers are for. I don't know any numbers. I know certain things that have helped me. One of the things that I feel has helped me the most is to say, sod it, if I want to do something and I'm afraid, if I'm scared of doing it, all right, I might give myself a couple of weeks to try it instead of one, or instead of doing it tomorrow, but I'll end up doing it, and I will do it. So all of the things where I've volunteered myself for things which I actually don't feel confident I can do have all brought me a success in my life and made me stronger. That I've been put into some incredibly embarrassing situations because I've had a big mouth and said, I'll do it. And you've got to, I think you've got to do that. If you want to gain some strength, then you've got to take some lessons from someone. Now, all of my life, I've welcomed taking lessons. When I was 15, I joined the army. I didn't do it. My father got tired, I think. In his heart, he loved me. I never was close to him, but he loved me as a son. And at the time, at 15, I was in the coal mines, and I was doing my training to be a coal miner. And my father must have looked at me coming home from my training down the pit, black with dust, and sitting exhausted in the chair, and I think he just took pity on me, and he wrote to a band, the Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders, and he said, you know, could you take my son? He's very interested in music. And they took me, and I was in the army. Now, as soon as I got in the army, now you're taking lessons. So now I took lessons, and this was something that I was interested in. So I went to Berlin. My 16th birthday, I was in Berlin, and I remember that the band leader, the band master as they're called, sent me to lessons. And I, of course, I'm a kid, I didn't realize the treasure that I was being handed, and I didn't pay enough attention. But I went to lessons with what I assume is the principal trombone player of the BBC, of the Berliner Philharmonic. and I went to lessons. He was a very, very kind man. He said, perhaps you can teach me English and I'll teach you the trombone. Wonderful. Now, that was short-lived because I got sent from there to Aberdeen because I was in a Scottish band, the Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders, and I got sent there. So from Berlin, as a 16-year-old, we're talking about an enormous adventure from me, going there. Going into the army was something that I hated most of the time, but that's another part of the video series. But I went. My parents put me on a train for Stirling, and I actually went and walked up the road that led to Stirling Castle, which is of course on a high point. And I went into the Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders. This was the start of an incredible journey. I went there to Edinburgh in Scotland, which I hadn't been in, and then I went to Berlin. I was in Berlin on my 16th birthday in the army, and learning music and being in a military band, playing everything from musical selections of shows, of movies, and classical music. It was all mind-blowing for a kid, you know. And then they sent me to Aberdeen, which was like a boys' school, and I was there for about a year, and then I joined the main band, during which time I'd actually learned to play the trombone. And then I went and I sat in with a band, with all of these instruments around me. It was incredible for me. Now, would that be for everyone? Maybe not. For me, in my way of looking at things, I can't understand why it wouldn't be an adventure for everyone. But that's me. You need to be willing to take on life full bore, without reservations. And the only way that you can do it is by starting. Now, it's a fact that it's easier to change something than to initiate it. So you give somebody a piece of blank paper and you tell them, draw something on it. That piece of blank paper will be like the headlights on a car, pointed blindingly into their face for a lot of people. Great artists. There's a man called Hopper that made a very famous painting. He's an American, and the painting that I'm sure that he was the one that painted was of a 50s diner with the counter that curls around, and he made a painting of that. I think somebody else took that idea and they did a painting with everybody that was sitting at the bar was a famous movie star. So Marilyn Monroe was there, and John Wayne was there, and all of these famous people, and it was a famous painting. Now, that guy, with all of the talent and recognition that he had, was afraid of the blank canvas. So here's someone who is so talented that the rest of us can only say, oh my God, if I could just have the talent that's in his finger, I would be happy. And sometimes he would sit stricken with fear in front of a blank canvas, just unable to even put the paintbrush on the canvas. Now, I know how that feels, because when I started to sketch, I always loved to sketch, and I later became an artist in life. And I remember some of being unable to fill the blank. Here's the blank piece of paper. Look at that. It's blinding, isn't it? Blinding white. And I'm thinking, this is my sketchbook, a new page. What? Oh, please guide me. What am I going to draw now? And instead, I would go to a little blank space, bit of space on my other page that was already messed up. It had a tea stain on it, and a drawing of this and that, and a thumb and a finger and a little motor car or something. And I would do what for me at that time was an amazing drawing of a dog. So it was only later, why didn't somebody go back to that time, going back to that time, if somebody could have told me why that was. And it was only later that I was having some lessons. I embraced having lessons from someone who knows. Get someone who is talented, get him to tell you how he's doing it. And I went to this friend who was a fellow musician, and he taught me sight singing, as simple as do re mi, and that's called the tonic solfa, by the way, and that's how you sight sing. And he taught this method, and while we were there he dropped this gem of information which answered so many questions in my life. He said there is such a thing. When I said about the blank piece of paper and about Mr. Hopper, he said yes, that's I call that the pre-start syndrome. Pre-start. So in other words, something that happens prior to being able to start. Now, if you're there and you're thinking and you're saying, I'd love to go to the Philippines, but what do I do? And a flood of questions will come in that you can't answer. Now here's another piece of information that I embraced and thought, this is incredible. It said, anything that you want to know, anybody that you want to meet, this is what you have to do. You are 6 people away from who you want to meet. So let's say that you want to meet the mayor of your town. There are 6 people that you need that will take you there. So the first person that you talk to is talk to your dad. You say, you know, I'd love to meet the mayor. And he'd say, oh yeah, well, you know, you really need someone who already knows about those people who are there. Why don't you talk to Harry, who's on the police force? Number 2. So then I go and speak to Harry, and Harry says, well, I couldn't help you, but I can introduce you to the chief of police or my superintendent. That's 3. So now you go and speak to the superintendent, and he says, well, it's difficult. You're going to have to talk to the police chief, who happens to be a cousin to... So now we're getting up there 4, and then 5, and then someone says, I know the mayor, and they say, and then they tell you, there's your 6th person tells you, this is what you have to do. You have to be where the mayor goes, and just go up and say, excuse me, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to ask you this question. Oh, how could I do? If I had said that at the beginning, you're telling me I want to meet the mayor, and if I said, why don't you just go to the ABC cafe? The mayor goes there, and just go up to him and say, Mr. Mayor, no, I can't do that. See, so sometimes this brings in another piece of information that you can use, where the problem that you have is of a certain magnitude. It's either a big problem or a small problem, or it's a giant problem, or it's a crisis that has to be happened. But the solution to that problem has to be of the same magnitude as the problem itself. So there's no point in saying something as a solution to someone who is telling you a problem that is so completely complex. You know, whenever I go to see Alfred, and oh my God, his problems are so complex. Now, if I said to him, Alfred, all that you have to do is drop that and go straight there and speak to the mayor and tell him, he'll say, no, it's not that easy. First of all, I have to go over. See, so you have to give him the solution that makes sense to him for the size of problem that he has. Well, Alfred, first of all, you have to go over there and speak to that person who knows this person, who knows the policeman, who knows the there, and then the mayor. You see? So, starting is the pre-start syndrome. You need to do something. Now, here's the other thing. When I encountered the Hopper, the artist, the Hopper, what we'll call it the Hopper problem. When I encountered that, and I'm looking, this is when I actually had to work for a living doing art, I didn't want to go into the workshop. I would avoid going into the workshop. I would find something else. I had to wash another shirt. I had to put the food on for tonight because we were having dinner. I had to go out and get some gas in the truck. I had to do all of these things which were nothing but indications that I had problem starting. So my own solution to that was I would go in and I would promise myself that I'm not going to work. All I'm going to do is go in and lift up the broom and sweep around the shop. And I'd do that. And I'd start sweeping. Now, as I'm starting to sweep, my creativity is starting to come up. And then I would fool myself yet again, and I would dust off the workbench. And I set my tools so that they were correctly placed and all ready. And then I'd say, well, I'm making a bit of dust here, I'll switch the fan on. Now I'm ready. Why don't I just screw that one screw in? And I would screw that one. As soon as I did that, we're over the pre-start. We're over the start. And I could do things. And I use this in many, many ways. I use this. So that would be the start of the next video is how do you get started? And there is a technique for getting started, and it's not complicated, and I'll do that with the next video. But thanks for being with me on this. I'm trying to keep these videos in some kind of order, but also so that they're not a huge waiting time. So I'm trying to keep them down to maybe 20 minutes. But thanks for being with me on this one.